and I explain to the guy what I need, and he comes out and he says, yeah, I have that. Comes out, brings this. I mean, it's enormous. I mean, this thing is like, must weigh 20 pounds. I mean, it's just huge. He goes, that's what you need. I was like, good gracious.
Meet Palle Bo, a digital nomad from Denmark on an epic journey around the world.
My name is Palle Bo, and I'm a long-time radio producer. In 2013, I started planning to become a digital nomad and a full-time traveler. 3 years later, I had sold my house, my car, and all my furniture. And in July 2016, I set out on a quest to visit every country in the world. In this podcast, I'm taking you along on my journey. And I'm sharing my ups and downs and let you listen in to conversations with some interesting people I meet along the way.
This is the Radio Vagabond Podcast.
On Monday morning, Season 4 of the Radio Vagabond Podcast will begin. You can join me as I travel to Morocco in Africa. First Fez, then Rabat, Marrakesh, Tiznit, and then further south through northwestern Africa. But at the same time, you will get interviews in my interview series every Friday, at least the next month. It's whenever I meet some interesting travelers with stories that might inspire you. And boy, have I met some interesting people recently. All this is recorded when I did the Nomad Cruise number 7 from Barcelona to Brazil. We were almost 500 nomads from more than 50 countries, and I talked to a handful of them for this podcast. These are truly inspiring people that have a lot of experience in living a nomad, travel independent lifestyle. My first Nomad Cruiser guest is Matt Bowles. He's been fully nomadic for 5 years, but location independent for longer than that.
I have actually been location independent for 11. The first of those 6 years I was living in Los Angeles by choice. And then the last just over 5 years I have been an itinerant nomad and have been to about 50 countries in the last 5 years.
And in those 5 years, Matt has had no resident address anywhere in the world.
Correct. So 2013, I gave up my apartment in LA, gave up my car, got rid of all my stuff, and I have been living all different places around the world.
Did you keep anything? Is there anything in storage?
There is.
Your vinyls.
Well, the reason why there's stuff in storage, and now thinking back, I would have done this differently, but the reason why there's stuff in storage is because when I initially left the U.S., I was not planning to nomad permanently and indefinitely. That was not the plan from the get-go. I was in a relationship with a woman in L.A. She was doing a PhD in Egyptian history at UCLA in Los Angeles, and she needed to go to Cairo for a year to do her dissertation research. So I was like, cool, I'm location independent. I'll go to Cairo for a year with you. Let's do it. Yeah. So we gave up. That was when we gave up our apartment, and I got rid of my car, and I put all my stuff in storage, and got down to a suitcase. Well, at the time, actually, it was a couple suitcases. I've subsequently minimalized.
Oh, they look just like my story.
Yeah. And then we went to Egypt for a year, but then I thought maybe we'd come back, after that, and I'd get my stuff out of storage. I didn't know what was going to happen, so I did keep my stuff, and there is stuff still in storage as a result of that. But I just kept going. She and I eventually broke up, and then I have been traveling the world ever since.
Before we dive more into the conversation with Matt, let me remind you that this episode is supported in part by Hotels25.com. It's a website that helps you find the best prices on hotel rooms, apartments, and hostels around the world. Hotels25.com. Try it out if you want to save time and money.
So that storage room is somewhere in LA. Are you thinking about going back and clearing it out?
I am thinking about it, yes, and I just put it in the back of my mind, and then I just forget about it, and then there's a payment that comes up eventually. I was like, man, I should really clear that out. So yeah, it's on the back burner.
Well, when I was in that situation, I sold my house, and then I started selling all my furniture, and it became more and more echo in my living room because people were coming, and there goes the couch, there goes the table. So And at that point, 2 months before I was about to start traveling, something I planned for 2 years, I was so on my way out of my comfort zone. I felt, what the hell am I doing? I don't want to leave. I don't want to go anywhere. I just want to be on my own couch watching Netflix. Did you have any of the same feeling as you were going through the process?
Of leaving, you mean?
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's definitely a transitionary process.
Of course, you didn't go to the airport alone. You went with your girlfriend and thought it was going to be 1 year in Egypt.
So this was an adventure that we were having together, right? It was an organized adventure that we were having together. But still, when you get rid of your apartment, you get rid of your car, you get rid of your stuff, like that's definitely a process. But we definitely had a plan, and we had a defined period for the adventure in front of us that ended up just being elongated.
Yeah. How's it been? What's the best part about being a nomad?
It's exhilarating. It is really extraordinary. I mean, one of the things is that I have control over the pace at which I travel, right? So I told you I've been to 50 countries in the last 5 years, so that's an average of probably 4 to 6 weeks per place, and I am choosing to travel at that pace. If I wanted to stay, and I have stayed in some places longer. I've lived in Buenos Aires for about 4 months. Cairo was about 9 months. So some of the places have been longer. Some of them have been a little bit shorter, and I can adjust that travel pace, as I choose. But I like to go at least 4 to 6 weeks to make sure that I feel like I'm living there, that I'm a resident there. I go to the grocery store and do shopping, and I have a local coffee shop where people know me, and I'm not just a tourist at a hotel passing through and racing around to see museums, right? I mean, I work professionally, I run my business and stuff like that, so I want to have access to a co-working space and be able to go into an office and really have a regular routine life wherever I am living. So I view myself as sort of residing or living in different places around the world. But I would also say the other thing that's been very important for me to develop over the years to be able to do this sustainably for 5+ years is to figure out the social sustainability pillar, right? How are you able to travel the world and have meaningful social relationships with people? And so one of the ways that I do that is I plug into work travel programs that curate communities of people in these different cities around the world. So right now you and I are on the Nomad Cruise, and we show up on the Nomad Cruise, and there's 500 people here that we're all in the same boat. There's a pun, right? Literally, but we're all in the same thing. Everybody's looking forward to meeting each other. We all know who we are. We have these, designation here, and so we're all talking to each other and getting to know each other, and it's a very supportive social environment. And
I feel we're part of a tribe.
Exactly. And so what I do is the same thing in every single city that I go to. So when I go and live in a city for 4 to 6 weeks, I am plugging into a community like this through a program like Remote Year or Hacker Paradise or Wanderist Life or a number of these companies that have now come into the space to cater to digital nomads that want to travel the world but want to do it with a meaningful community. And so you can plug into these types of programs, and they provide you workspace, they provide you accommodations, and they provide you, most importantly, a really cool community of people to explore the city with and hang out with.
I did some of the same thing when I was in Cape Town for 2 months earlier this year. There was a Wi-Fi tribe was there, and I didn't go and work there, but I hooked on to some of their tours. They invited me, and I got to know them. And do you approach, because you're not a part of, say, Remote Year, do you become a part of it while you're there? Or?
I was a paid customer of Remote Year. I joined the program. I did it for 12 months, went around the world with about 40 people for the year. And then when I completed that program, I became an alumni of that program, which means that I can pay a reduced rate now to plug into any of their programs. So the Remote Year currently is launching probably a group of about 40 people into orbit almost every month. So there are a number of Remote Year cohorts that are currently orbiting around the world, and I can plug into any of those cohorts in a particular city and spend that month with them, use their stay in their accommodations, use their co-working space, and participate in their experience events that they have organized on the ground, cooking classes and hikes and wine tastings, and do all the stuff with the group. at a reduced rate since I am an alumni and such. Same thing with Hacker Paradise this year. I bought a 3-month package with them, and I plugged into 3 of their 1 month long programs. I'm now an alumni of theirs. So next year, I'll be able to, do a similar thing. So I am absolutely a paid customer of every single one of these groups. And what I'm primarily paying for, sure, you could book an accommodation yourself on Airbnb. What I'm primarily paying for is the way that they curate a community of people to live with and live in a manner that is really an intentional community, a supportive community, because for me, that's very important when I'm traveling.
Both Matt and I are very extrovert, social people that enjoy going out and making new friends. And we're both traveling alone. One of the questions I get asked a lot is if I ever get lonely.
I think it's very real for me, which is why I, travel the world by patronizing these companies and go to the cities where they have communities, because that for me is really one of the most important sustainability pillars, because I really need that, supportive social community around me. One of the things that becomes cool as you've been traveling for 5+ years is that when you go and you interact with all these different circles and these different companies and meet these different nomads, they will overlap with you in other future travel paths that you may be taking. So for example, I was in Nairobi, Kenya about 2 months ago for the month, and I went there with one of these work travel companies called Wanderlust Life. One of the women that I had met on Hacker Paradise, I told her I was going there. She's like, oh, I'd love to go on that trip too. So she signed up as well and went. So I knew somebody from Hacker Paradise that was there. Then there were 2 Kenyan friends of mine that I had met on the Nomad Cruise a few months earlier, the last Nomad Cruise, who live in Nairobi, and I knew that they were there. So I reached out to them and told them I was coming to town. So I knew people from Nomad Cruise. And then I just put a message out to the Remote Year alumni channel, and I said, does anybody happen to be in Kenya in the month of September? 6 people said, oh, I'm going to be there. So then I had a Remote Year meetup in Kenya, right? So as you start getting involved in these different nomad networks, pretty much anywhere you go, I can put something out to the alumni networks of all these different groups, and it's almost a certainty that a number of people will be there in addition to whatever group I'm currently living with in that city.
You're listening to the Radio Vagabond Podcast. Before we continue, I'd like to remind you that I would be so thrilled if you shared it on Facebook or Twitter. And now, back to the show. We met on the first one, and you had a session or a workshop. You are a master packer.
So my workshop was called How to Travel the World for a Year Plus with Carry-On Luggage Only and Look Good While You're Doing It.
Yeah.
And that I think is really the kicker, right? Is that I travel with a suitcase, right? I'm not a backpacker or that kind of stuff, but it's a 22-inch rollerboard suitcase that fits in the overhead compartment, and then a laptop backpack that slides over the handle and fits under the seat in an airplane. So any regular airplane, that is, you're allowed to carry that on the airplane. So I do not check luggage, and it took me quite a long time to get down to that level of packing. I will tell you, when I first left LA and I literally brought, a giant countertop espresso maker with me that took up that entire suitcase alone, wrapped in a few t-shirts, and then I had this enormous giant suitcase filled with all of these clothes that I never wore. I packed all this stuff. It was obscene. It was crazy.
My suitcase, which is the one in my logo picture, it was so enormous. So if I filled it only halfway up, it would be 30 kilos. So it would be too heavy anyway to check in. And no, it was just too much.
And when you start traveling the world with that much luggage, it very quickly becomes so painful, right? It costs money to check it. It gets lost or damaged when you get to your destination oftentimes. And then it's just carting that stuff around and schlepping it all over the place. It just becomes so painful that you are highly incentivized to downsize your luggage. And so I started researching very meticulously how specifically I could downsize and what specific things. And I really started to read about travel packing. And so, the way that I have been able to do that on carry-on luggage and what I talk about in the presentation is how to create, how to first of all buy gear that is made out of travel-conducive fabrics. So probably about 90% of my gear is made out of merino wool, which is it has very unique properties. One is that it's temperature regulating. So when it's warm outside, it helps to keep you cooler. When it's cool outside, it helps to keep you warmer. Most importantly, it's naturally antimicrobial, so it doesn't retain odor. So most of the proposition of these merino wool clothing companies, you can wear the shirt for 40 days in a row. It will not retain odor. So everything from this dress shirt that I'm wearing, this is 100% merino wool. My running socks, my running shorts, my running shirts, my sweatshirts, my hat, my gloves, like everything. It's 90% of my gear is merino wool. So that's one thing. You also want your clothing.
Sometimes I look for it. Sorry to interrupt you. Sometimes I look for it. I can't find it anywhere.
So I actually put a video together, which I'm happy to share with your listeners on exactly what I pack, what the brands are, what the specific products are, and then what the websites are where you can find it. Because I had to go search for all that stuff as well, right? Exactly where you find it. But I have my whole suitcase audit on what I pack and where to find it. But a lot of the stuff you can either buy on Amazon, or you can buy it through specific brand websites. So like Icebreaker Merino, for example, is one of the main merino wool brands that I use. They have their own website, but they also sell stuff on Amazon. It's pretty good to compare both. Usually see which one is cheaper. Sometimes it'll be black, sales or whatever. But that, and then just looking for other clothing that's, you want highly compressible stuff, no bulky sweaters, big things that take up space, layered compressible stuff, anti-wrinkle, stuff, things of that nature. And then you just want to stylistically, you just want to be able to be very versatile in terms of your colors and the different types of outfits that you can mix and match different clothes with and stuff like that. So I did a whole a presentation on it, as you mentioned, on the last cruise.
And now you do a podcast, and when I heard how much gear you have for that, it blew my mind.
Yeah, so the Maverick Show, we just launched the podcast. It's called The Maverick Show with Matt Bowles, Adventures in Real Estate, Entrepreneurship, and World Travel. And yes, I travel the world with a podcasting studio that I can set up wherever I am around the world, at a co-working space or in my apartment or wherever it is.
But have a look at this. This is basically my recording studio. What do you have?
So I have I could probably show you a picture of it, but I have a Heil PR40 microphone with a shock mount and a pop filter on it, and then I have a boom arm that comes, hooks onto the table.
I
and comes
miss
up
my boom
like
arm. Oh, I miss it.
And then I speak into that, and then I also and then that microphone runs into a Onyx Blackjack mixer, and then I have a second microphone, which is an ATR 2100 microphone, which also plugs into the mixer, and that's for the guest that I'm interviewing. So we have two separate microphones, we have two separate audio tracks, and then the mixer just plugs right into my computer. So the reality is that most of that stuff actually is not enormous, meaning that I can fit it all except for the boom. The boom arm fits diagonally in my rollerboard suitcase, right? But all the rest of it fits in my laptop backpack along with my laptop. So I go through all that in the video too, in terms of how I, how I pack that stuff. But yeah, and this is actually the kicker. I'm gonna add one more thing. I do actually still travel with an espresso maker. It's just a smaller one, but it's a real espresso maker because I'm an espresso guy. So I probably drink 3 to 4 shots of espresso a day. Okay, and so for me, if you were to go to a coffee shop and buy 4 double espressos a day, that's at least $10, right? So if you're literally doing that every day, it's $80 a week or $70 a week or whatever it is. So I found this amazing contraption, which I also show in the video. It's called, the brand is Hand Presso. Okay, and it's literally like this big, and
give me that in inches or centimeters.
I'm showing you. Yeah. It's probably less than 12 inches long. But what happens is you don't need any electricity to use it, and yet it's a real espresso maker. What I mean by that is you can actually get 16 bars of pressure. Which is the definition of real espresso, which is why those stovetop espresso makers they don't make real espresso. You can't make real espresso on the stove because you have to express it out with 16 bars of pressure. And so the way that you're able to get 16 bars of pressure on this device without using electricity is a bicycle pump technology. So the handle pulls out and you literally pump it up as a gauge. And the gauge goes up to 16 bars of pressure. You pump it up with a bicycle pump, and then as long as you can get boiling water from anywhere, from a flight attendant on an airline, or a campfire, or like wherever you get boiling water. You pour the boiling water in, and then you put the espresso in. It has a portafilter cup and a twist thing. You've got 16 bars of pressure. You espresso it out, and boom, you've got espresso with real crema. It's a real espresso, so that I carry with me everywhere.
And without that, you cannot work.
It would be a struggle. I do espresso first thing in the morning every day for sure.
Yeah. Tell me about your work and how to balance the work, exploring. How do you balance the free time and your work? How much you work?
Yeah, so that's a really important thing, I think, when you're getting into the long-term travel lifestyle, because most of us associate going to a new exciting place with vacation, right? So we're in a new place and it's so stimulating and it's so exciting and it's so new. We just want to go out and explore everything and see it all and all this, and we're not working, right? So when you're working and traveling at the same time, it becomes a very important balance, and a lot of it comes down to self-discipline. So as I said, one of the things that I need to make sure, first of all, is I have work facilities. So I need to have a co-working space, which is like an office.
You can't work at the kitchen table in an Airbnb?
I have done that in the past, depending on where you are. One, the Wi-Fi sometimes is less consistent than it is at a professional workspace. So I've had Wi-Fi troubles. I've interviewed Airbnb hosts. I've said, send me the speed test of your Wi-Fi. Prove to me
that
it's
is
as fast
that
as
is
you said
something
it is.
that they should require. That's where Airbnb really could do something that would be helpful.
I feel like they could, but then even times if they send it to you, sometimes it can be inconsistent and this kind of stuff. So a lot of times a professional co-working space is going to be able to give you 24/7 access, inconsistent Wi-Fi. And for me also, I feel like I also like to get out of the house and not work at the same place where I sleep. So if I'm renting like an efficiency apartment, you know what I mean? And might be able to have a desk next to the bed, next to the kitchen or whatever. But if I'm working there all day and then I'm also sleeping there all night and I'm not getting out of the house, right? Whereas a co-working space, it's like an office environment. There's also other people around. I mean, it's a good way to meet other people, that are there, but it gives you sort of a professional office environment. Also has conference rooms and things like that where I can host a podcast or, do things of that nature. So I always make sure that I have the facilities that I need to do it. And then really it's just about discipline. So for me, sometimes it depends on time zone. Right? Like if I'm trying to coordinate meetings with people or podcast interviews with people or whomever, I need to adjust myself to their time zone. So if I'm in Asia versus Europe versus the Americas, that may mean that I'm staying up later at night or I'm doing different things. So I'll calculate what type of time frame I want to be on. And then based on that, I can structure, okay, these are the types of work hours that I want to be working. And then these are the times when I'll be exploring the city or going out or that kind of stuff. And the discipline part comes when you say, I'm in this new epic, amazing, exciting city, yes, but I'm going to be here for 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks. So every weekend I'll be able to go do this. The first weekend I'll do this, next weekend I'll do that, next weekend I'll do this, and then in the evenings I'll go to these places. And then you can spread it out over 4 to 6 weeks so that you're not trying to do everything as soon as you get there.
So you do actually have more than a 4-hour work week?
I do. I choose to, yeah. Yeah.
And you work in real estate? How does that work?
Yeah, so my company is called Maverick Investor Group, and what we do is it's actually a licensed real estate brokerage in the United States, but we serve real estate investors exclusively. So what we do is we help people buy rental properties in the United States from anywhere in the world. So they can be Americans that are buying them, or they can be Americans that are nomading around the world, or they can be foreign nationals from any country, but all the properties in the United States. And the value proposition is that these are, first of all, located in U.S. real estate markets that we consider to be investor advantaged, meaning markets where you can buy relatively low, rent relatively high, but they're in economically healthy markets, so you can get good cash flow. And when they're presented through my company, we offer a turnkey buying opportunity, meaning that these single-family homes have already been fully renovated. They already have a long-term tenant in place paying rent. They already have a local property manager on the ground collecting the rent, handling the maintenance, all that. So you can own them. You own the actual deeded real estate. You own the house yourself, but you don't have to live near it, and you don't have to have the headaches of being the landlord. So you can buy it from anywhere. So it's perfect for digital nomads or people that are living anywhere.
Coming up next, Matt will tell his favorite story from the last 5 years of traveling. And while he's thinking of which one to choose, I want to mention that this episode is brought to you in part by hotels25.com. It's a website that helps you find the best prices on hotel rooms around the world in one simple search. And we're back.
Oh man, my favorite travel story. You didn't prep me for this or prompt me for it. So
that's why I gave you a few seconds.
No, a few seconds. That's what it was. Okay, so I'm going to circle back to the to what happened with the espresso maker that I first left the United States with. So before I had this hand espresso thing that I just described, I literally had a La Pavone Stradivari countertop espresso maker from Milan. It was a manual lever espresso maker. I mean, the thing was enormous, right, on the countertop. It literally took up an entire 22-inch rollerboard suitcase to carry this thing, and I packed it, wrapped my T-shirts around it, and packed it in its own suitcase, carried this thing down to Buenos Aires, Argentina, because that's where I was going to live for 3 months before we went to Egypt. So I thought, I'm going to be there.
I cannot live without it.
I can't. I'm going to be there for 3 months, so you know what? It's going to be worth it. I'll just get it down there. Get it down there, get it to the apartment. I put it up on the counter. I'm so excited it's there. And all of a sudden I realize that not only is there an electrical plug converter issue, but there is, it's not like an adapter where the plug size is different. It's a different voltage. Ooh. So 220 volts versus 110 volts that actually come out of the electrical socket. And so you cannot use an American appliance in an Argentine thing because it'll blow it up. It'll explode it because it's twice as much voltage. And so the only way you can do it is if you buy what's called a transformer or a converter, whatever the name is, but it's this massive like electrical thing. So I was like, how do I get that? So I call my Airbnb host and she's like, yeah, you should be able to get one right down at the hardware store in the corner. I was like, oh, cool. So I told you I had packed a whole bunch of stuff that I had never, hadn't worn in years. I was like, oh, maybe I'll need this at some point. So I'll pack these hiking boots that I haven't worn in like 10 years. So I packed. So then I'm going out to go get this converter. I was like, you know what? I think I'll wear those hiking boots. I'll put some use to those things. So I'm wearing my hiking boots.
These boots are made for walking.
These are made for walking. So go to the hardware store on the corner and in my very broken Spanish, explain to them I need to buy a converter for a voltage converter. Guy's like, no problem. How many watts is your device? And I tell him it's 1,000 watts. And the guy just stands there stunned. He's like, holy cow. He goes,
maybe we have a language problem here. Did you say 1,000?
Yeah, he goes,
mil?
Yeah, it's like, are you sure? I said, yeah, it's this massive countertop espresso thing. He goes, there is only one store in the city that sells a transformer for that level of voltage, and it's about a 30-minute walk from here. You had to go down to the center of the city, and this is where it is. But he wrote me the address. I said, okay. And I said, you know what? I'm going to walk around the city because I'm not going to take a cab or anything. I just got here. I want to see the city, so I'll walk through the city. So I walk down 30 minutes, go into the store, and I explain to the guy what I need, and he comes out, and he says, yeah, I have that. Comes out, brings this. I mean, it's enormous. I mean, this thing is must weigh 20 pounds. I mean, it's just huge. And he goes, that's what you need. I was like, good gracious. I was like, how much does it cost, right? And he started off with about $100, and I negotiated him down to about $50 US, which was the best I was going to get. So I said, fine, I'll pay the $50. So I pay him $50. I want my espresso. Oh, this is the most expensive espresso I've had, but I'll take it. So I pay him $50, and then I am carrying this massive thing. I mean, it is so heavy, and I'm just. But again, I'm in the mentality I'm going to walk back, right? So I'm walking back. All of a sudden, it starts to rain, and I'm walking back. And as I'm walking in the rain, these boots that I had not worn in 10 years, the sole of one of them starts coming up, right? So like my foot's coming up, and the sole is like staying on the ground, and I'm like, oh man, this is not good, right? And it starts raining harder and harder, and all of a sudden the entire sole comes off my boot. So like my sock is literally coming, this like the bottom of my shoe is literally my sock. So my sock is stepping in the puddle on the wet ground, and then all of a sudden the sole starts coming off my other shoe where these boots I had worn in 10 years, and then all of a sudden it's just me and my socks, and at that point everything is so soaked. I'm like, I'm not gonna get in a cab now, I'll just finish the walk. So I get back to the apartment carrying this 20-pound converter. Both of the soles have fallen off my shoes that I hadn't worn in 10 years, which I desperately needed to bring to Buenos Aires. That was a good idea. And finally I make it back, and I knock on the door, and my relationship partner at the time opens the door and says, sees you there just totally drenched with nothing on the bottom of my shoes. My shoes are like up around my ankle. She's like, what on earth happened to you? I was like, I got the converter. And so that was my introduction to Buenos Aires. The converter worked.
And the espresso was good.
3 months, the espresso was good.
It was the best espresso you had.
But in order to maintain that setup, I would then, therefore, forthcoming, have to carry both the espresso machine and this now new 25-pound converter with me anywhere in the world. And I was like, you know what? There needs to be a better option. And of course, there was, which is the one that I now carry.
And I can take anything you can throw at me, and nothing can get me down. Life is looking so bright, the sun is up again. I'm feeling like I could fly. No clouds in my way, no. And I'm living the good life. And I'm living the good life now. I'm living the good life, and nothing can get me down, no.
Like I mentioned, Matt is also a podcaster. He's been recording for a while, and now he's publishing an episode every week.
Right. So the Maverick show, Adventures in Real Estate Entrepreneurship and World Travel. I am interviewing today's most interesting real estate investors, entrepreneurs, world travelers, and I have been doing that along my travels and recording the canned interviews so that I could build up a content bank, right? So as you listen to them, they're not even necessarily released in the order in which they were recorded, and many of them you'll see are recorded in different cities around the world. So we'll usually say we're in this city and I'm with this person, and they are really, really interesting people. I mean, I've been very selective in terms of the individuals that I've chosen to do this, and they're people that are, either building really interesting businesses, while traveling the world and have interesting travel stories, or they're people that are, have invested in real estate and are living off their passive income and using that to travel around the world and do interesting things, or that kind of stuff. So I think it's a show where you're going to find interesting stories and interesting people, but you're also going to find tactical, actionable advice of me going deep with these people on exactly how did you build this business, how did you do this thing, how did you invest in this way and build your real estate portfolio up to this level, and pulling out specific tactical content that the listeners can use and apply in their own lives to do that. And I even go into things like, how do you deal with stress reduction as an entrepreneur? How do you optimize your productivity and structure your time? And you're really pulling out hacks that are quite applicable to people, from these very successful people, and learning what the best practices are that they've developed over the years.
And you also talk a little bit about travel, and I remember I listened to the episode that you did with my friend Johnny FD, and you were talking about bucket lists and a whole ton about the Galapagos.
All of that stuff, yeah. So all of the people that I'm interviewing, these are very experienced world travelers. I want to say, I feel like probably everyone that's been on my show so far has probably been to at least 50 countries, and so I definitely, with that caliber of world traveler, I certainly want to ask everybody, for my own sake, in addition to the audience, I want to ask them what are their top 3 favorite travel destinations they've ever been and why. What do they love about those places? And then what are their top 3 bucket list destinations that they want to go, that are at the top of their list they most want to see, and to get those types of travelers to really speak specifically about those 2 categories, I think also has provided me a lot of value in developing my list about where I want to go as well.
That's awesome. Thanks so much. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks. It's been great to be here. I appreciate you having me on.
Thank you again, Matt. It was truly an inspiration to meet you, and I can't wait to hang out again. I put a lot of links in the show notes on the Radiovagabond.com. Next Friday, you'll get another episode in my interview series. This time, I'll talk to another cruiser. He's also from the US, and he's just fulfilled 3 life goals: to run 25 marathons, visit 100 countries, and start a social enterprise. His name is Tarek.
What? This is my dream life.
And my name is Palabo. Monday morning, the official season 4 of the Radio Vagabond podcast will begin. We're going to Morocco.
I'm back dragging my suitcase, holding my microphone.
And I'm so looking forward to that. See ya.